Now let's talk about another crisis the world is turning a blind eye to. Myopia or short-sightedness. It's where people can see close-up objects clearly, but their distance vision is blurry. Myopia is a largely unrecognized epidemic. It is targeting the young. An entire generation of nearsighted kids is growing up right before our eyes. In fact, many are going blind. High myopia is a leading cause of blindness in China, Japan and Taiwan. In China, 90% of the teens are myopic. Same for Taiwan, 90% high schoolers are myopic. In Japan, more than 60%, and in South Korea, Seoul, 97% 19-year-old men are myopic. What about the rates in India, the US and Europe? Well below 50%, but rising sharply. In fact, by 2050, half of the world population could be wearing glasses. Why is this happening and what can we do to fix it? Our next report tells you.
The world is myopic about a number of things. Climate change, wealth gap, gender parity, you name it. Before we call it a day, let's add another issue to that list. We're talking about myopia itself. The world seems to lack foresight. It can't see the epidemic of myopia that's brewing right before everyone's eyes. What's worse, it's targeting the young. Kids, teens, young adults. You pick the age group and chances are you'll see the young under threat from myopia. A disease they didn't see coming and a disease that's making many go blind. First, let's talk about the basics. What is myopia? It refers to short-sightedness. It's an eye disorder. People with myopia can clearly see close-up objects. For example, they can read a book. Wait, let's be real. They can watch a reel on their phone without facing a problem. But their distance vision is blurry, meaning they can't see the blackboard or recognize faces of people standing at a distance. And this isn't ideal, even for the antisocial. So myopic people usually wear glasses or contact lenses to correct their vision. After all, not everyone can be Spider-Man. Over the past few years, there has been an explosion of myopia in Asia. In China, 90% of teenagers and young adults are myopic. In the 1950s, that figure was 10%. In South Korea's Seoul, 96.5% of 19-year-old males are short-sighted. Singapore has a myopia rate of about 80% in young adults. In Taiwan, 90% of high schoolers are myopic. And in Japan, over 62%. Around the 1950s, that number was just 11%. In other parts of the world, these numbers are relatively lower. In the US and the UK, myopia rates are below 50%. But even if these numbers sound better than those in Asia, it's not cause for happiness. They all saw a sharp rise in just the past few decades, much like the Asian outlier, India. It's another example of this phenomenon. Today, 21% of children suffer from myopia, a relatively small number, but back in 1999, it was about 4%. In fact, numbers are increasing so sharply all over the world, doctors estimate that by 2050, half of the world will be wearing glasses. The problem is already getting out of hand. High myopia has become the leading cause of blindness in Japan, China and Taiwan. If current trends continue, the situation will only get worse. Millions more people around the world will go blind and much earlier in life than expected. So the question is, why are so many children becoming myopic? In the past, a number of factors were blamed. Brown hair, long heads, pipe smoking, pregnancy, big eyes, muscle spasms. Thankfully, today they're all folk theories. Now ask anyone and they'll blame mobiles. A few years ago, they would have blamed television or reading under the covers with a bad flashlight. Then there's genetics. They say if your parents have glasses on, so will you. But that's not always true. This begs the next question. What is the main problem? It's the lifestyle of children. In a nutshell, the more time kids spend outside, the less likely they are to develop myopia. Looking at distant objects helps children. So does outdoor light. Sunlight is great for their eyes. This explains why the silent progression of myopia hastened during the pandemic. In 2020, an average 8-year-old was spending over 5 hours a day glued to screens. and that's just for fun. Add more screen time to that for schoolwork. The problem is real and the pandemic made it worse. But now that it's over, we are free to go out and play. Because as it plays out, for children, venturing out is serious business. At this point, they need it. They need to detach from their mobiles and tablets and spend time out in the open, even if it's for a few hours of playtime, or for a hobby, or to take their pet dog for a walk. Because myopia is like a ticking time bomb. In order to defuse it, we must carry it outside.